Looks like we're live. G'day everyone. Ray and I are now here in Melbourne. I'll just tilt that a bit. We've just borrowed someone's office space. Had a big day today, I'd say.
Very big.
A very big day. And been over here meeting investors, having a long conversation with all the different ones with all the questions. Had a big investor night last night. Had a really good one in Perth last Thursday, and so the things that continue to roll on. But we're certainly getting there on the investment front. And for those that don't know, the expressions of interest are now kind of at nearly up to 1.6, I think, million, down to, I guess the range is 700 and something up to 1.6 million. So it's been quite an amazing 3 and a bit weeks. But yeah, so that's a little bit of an update. Tonight, we're really here to answer any questions around the investment, around the governance of the business. Ray is particularly strong on that, and as the co-founder has brought a lot of that to the business. So we'll cover a few questions, and then we'll answer any questions that come up on the screen. So yeah, we're working off one laptop here, which is a bit more challenging. Coming to Melbourne, we've had to bring a bit less technology. So yeah, I guess first thing in terms of my background, my background really around the sort of running a business is I've spent probably half of my professional life as working lower down in a business, not at the sort of management level, being an engineer or being a consultant to businesses, that kind of thing. Did some consulting work for Ray at one point. So less of a person that's been involved in that early on in my career, but then 2009 started a thing called Days of Change, which is actually how Ray and I met, and then started to work on a board, work on a CEO level, and started to learn about how you put a whole business together from that I guess you call it the C-suite and the whole governance side of it as well. But certainly learning on the journey, and doing Days of Change was a big help for Tiller Rides. But as you'll see through the team that we've assembled at Tiller Rides, there's certainly a lot of more experience than me, and Ray is one of those people. So yeah, maybe you could talk a bit about your experience and background. Ooh. So in the management and governance side of things.
So, I mean, I have been a CEO for more than 25 years in different sectors, and I've been serving on boards for 15 to 20 years and have chaired quite a few and just been a director of others. And it's actually a good match, really, to at the same time be a CEO and be a chair of a board. And that's because you get to see both sides of the story, and you get to see that the board and the CEO, in our case the MD, have to work really closely together for a successful business. And you kind of see what a board's role is and what it requires, and at the same time, what an executive is expected to do, and the sort of pressures that are placed on people who've got the actual doing the real day-to-day work. So I mean, it's been for me a good match of experience. And bringing it to this particular venture has been a great learning opportunity, because the startup is amazingly challenging, as we know, but really incredibly interesting. And I think, I suppose in our partnership here, I've tried to bring my executive experience to it, but also my experience in leading boards and bringing boards together. Mm-hmm. And, I think, people have said to us continuously that we have an amazing board for an organisation of our relative youth. And I think that's true. We have an amazing group of skilled, experienced people in different fields. And so that's been a sort of rewarding part of helping you get this thing going.
And what would you say about, some people ask, they say, oh, it's a big board. I mean, we've had one person that has, we had 8, we're now down to 7. One person's got a few extra commitments they have just been put on by their other workplace, so they've removed themselves from the board. But at 7, it's still quite a large board. What's your view on the size of our board, how it works, functionality of it? What's your...
Yeah, look, I mean, boards aren't static things. We kind of see examples of where people have sat on boards for 20 years or 15 years or something as if it doesn't change. So I don't really see it like that. So I think that the board, you have to have the board for the moment,
Yeah.
and for that particular period of what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So in our case, we were starting from nothing and really had to build up our ability to address all the challenges and take the business forward. So I felt we needed actually quite a large board because we needed a whole range of skills at the table at that point. So, you know, we needed someone with great manufacturing experience, and we've got that. We needed clearly a marketing expert, and we had that. We needed some startup experience, and we had that. And then we needed some sustainability experience, finance, all of these sorts of things. So I think to start up with, I was really happy with the complement of people we've got on the board. But, you know, I don't see it as static. You know, I'm really confident now with our fundraise that we'll get there, and we're going to take another step, and then we need to review what that step involves. So I don't think there's a magic number, but generally speaking, you would rather have fewer rather than more.
Why is that? Why?
Just it works better.
Okay.
But, you know, in the end, I always say that the most important requirement of a board member is emotional intelligence rather than anything else. So, you know, I sit on other boards that are similar size, where there is a great sort of communal work ethic and respect for the other board members. So, you know, some may say it differently. I don't think there's a magic number. But, you know, like fewer and more cohesive, I think will be what we'll do in the future.
Yeah. And I mean, one of the things people do ask us is about that number of people, and Ray would never say this about himself, but the way he chairs the board and having the ability to, I mean, even though we're sort of co-founders and we know each other quite well, the ability to just stop people talking when they've said enough, or spread it out to the room so that everyone has contribution to a conversation and a decision. If you had a large board and not a great chair, I think you might have more problems. Yeah, so I think that's one of the strengths. And I'll say that about Ray, but he probably wouldn't himself. So look, as I said, there is the opportunity to put questions in there if you'd like to ask us some questions as we're going along. We do tend to find more people ask questions over the next couple of days, but that's fine as well. So if you're watching this not live, put your questions in and we'll answer them as they come up. So we've got a bit of a schedule here from Emily, who's back in Perth. Thank you, Emily, she's probably watching. Putting all this together. Hopefully she's watching.
Yeah, I'd say
it's a bit of a funny one because it's 6 o'clock, 6:20 here in Melbourne, and it's 4 something in Perth, which most people are probably still at work. But anyway, we're doing it a bit early for Perth time. Just as just talking about the business, the whole business was founded because, and as most startups are, to solve a problem. And the problem that we set up to solve was, how do you create an urban bike, an urban form of transport that's a bike that solves all the problem that people experience with normal bikes? And the two, if you sum it at the high level, it has to have the features that overcome not having lights on the bike, the locking system, all that kind of thing. So most of you would have seen that on our website. But it's also, how do you have the style so that people want to use it every day and for any occasion? And we've even, especially everywhere we go, especially here in Melbourne, there's lots of people want to ride to work, ride out for dinner and those kind of things. There's a lot more bike paths here than in Perth, I would say.
I've really noticed that. I've noticed that. Yeah.
It's right through the busiest streets. There's a clear bike path, and I find quite a lot of respect from drivers where I've been riding our Roadster, which we've got here. And not that Perth don't respect drivers, but often there's not a lane that's dedicated to a bike. So that's pretty good. So that's really our thing. And if you get more people riding, you're obviously going to improve their health, well-being, and reduce the impact on the planet. So that's what we started. And the last few years has really been building the business up to that point. Just in terms of some of the milestones we've been through, maybe I'll cover a few. You can see some here, Ray. 2015-16, I was really one of the sort of got started on the whole thing, looking at what problems people had, doing the research, working out what the barriers were, and then getting the whole business, the whole design side of it up. And I think the end of 2016 is when Ray and I met. And Ray basically said, oh yeah, I love what you're doing, love the product, love the approach you're using. I think that was a big factor for your involvement.
Yeah.
and then we headed off. So maybe you could talk about the 2017 side of things. Can you read it or you? That's
We'll just have a look at 2017, although I do remember it.
Yeah, you know what it is, but it's kind of.
So I suppose, I mean, if I just backtrack to my version of 2016, perhaps because there was this passion to make a difference that I was attracted to, and there was also this beautiful design process where a lot of people had got involved for no return.
Yeah, for no return.
And so there was a sense of passion about making a difference that was great for me. And then really I thought, as you know, I always say this, someone should really help you with this. And then, and
I needed help.
And so it turns out to be me, and I was happy to do it. But it's about sort of delivering to a venture what you can add. Mm-hmm. So I suppose what I was adding at that point was, while you and other people who are really great at that stuff designed an amazing bike or were developing this concept, someone else needed to build the business and work out what the business was going to do. And I think this is probably the focus of people we're talking to who are presumably thinking about investing in the business. They want to know that we built a good business. Mm-hmm. So, we spent that time actually putting in place proper business structures, even though we were just a startup. And so that was about obviously getting a board. Yep. We did a lot of groundwork in terms of delegations so that, that it would be run properly and honourably. Yep. We set up really good board meeting structures, board paper structures, performance indicators, and all this sort of boring stuff that people find for you and other people.
And often they do it a bit later on, which is probably potentially too late.
So we did all that really very early, so that we had a very business-like and strategic focus on what we were trying to do. And so, I think that the response to us has been, hey, this is amazing for a startup. But so that was nice, because that's what I thought we needed to do as well. Mm-hmm. And, I think it's about building foundations, isn't it? While we allow some people to be creative and make a great product and keep refining it, you need some sort of substance to make a business successful. So that's, I guess, what I was doing a bit in the background. And we got together some great people. Mm-hmm. But, in the end, they did it because of the passion as well. Your passion is infectious, and so we not only got
our passion after that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I still, you are the driving force of passion for this, and I'm with you. But we've got other people to be inspired by that, and the right sort of people that we need. So we put in place serious business here, and now that's very important, isn't it? Because we're looking to. We'll talk about this. We're looking to engage lots of people in being part of our business. Now, I think they would want to know that it's on a good foundation.
Yeah. And I guess we've always sat down and said, well, what is it going to take to get to the next step? And that's constantly done. And in this case, even with our first investment round, I'll just say from my perspective, if anyone's going to invest money in this, I would want to know that there's a governance structure there that's going to make sure that the money's not going into a hole, and I think we feel a personal weight for that investment, but at the same time, you can feel a personal weight, but you want to also be structured and organised in how you're actually going to use that money. And all the way through, there's been a really good governance structure, and we really haven't wasted any money when you look at what we've done in the last 3 years. It's been lean, but you often hear people putting money in startups, they're burning a lot of cash. That's not what we wouldn't have said we'd done that. We've actually used it wisely through the whole process. Yeah,
and we've made hard decisions about what to prioritise, because there's not a limitless amount of cash. Yeah. And so at different stages of the project, we've had to say, we have to work hard on this now, and we have to let something else go for the moment. Yeah. And that's, I think, one of the hardest parts of doing what we've done. Yeah. And a lot of that fell to you, because some of it was sort of staffing decisions, that you had to say, well, we can't keep you at the moment because we're stewards of other people's money, and we've got to get the result that we're striving for, and it means we've got to focus here for now. Yeah. So I think we've done that pretty well.
Yep.
And again, it just comes back to having a number of opinions and voices contributing to what is the priority and how do we deliver it.
Yep. And I feel like when we get to the end of a board meeting, we've often, especially board meetings, we've often thrown a few things around, made a decision. And I know for me, I feel because we've got this diversity of opinions on that board, you feel like the decision is a really good one. And so you feel like you can sort of go forward with it confidently. You don't feel like you sort of, oh, maybe we need to have another discussion. And, you know, and I've been in situations where you have a conversation, but you didn't quite get to an answer. And then actually you still got to wait another month for the next meeting before and that's not really what's happened with us. So we definitely focus on what's important and what needs to be decided on, and then we just get on with it. And that's been a good.
Yeah, and you know, I think the other thing is about having a strategic framework. I think I was talking about this last night at the investors meeting, but you know, very important to have a strategic framework so we know what needs to be done and what we plan to do in different time frames, you know, going forward often for 2 or 3 years. And of course it has changed, but we've known that we've had to sort of do this project in stages and we'd have to get to here before we could get to there. So I think that we have always had a strategy that we've been working to, and mostly, despite all the things that change and have to be rethought, we're quite close to delivering on even the timeframes of that strategy. I think.
Yeah, well, mid this year, let's say that's June, July, that's when we said we needed to raise money, probably over a year ago. But we also said we need to show the traction on the sales, so we had to set goals on that, and we achieved them. And we needed to get a manufacturing partner in place, and that was the 2 goals set for the business, and we ticked those off before we started this. So we're probably a month behind where we'd like to have been, but that's, for a startup, that's pretty good actually, as it turns out. So
yeah, I think so.
I'll just have a look if there's any questions. We've got one question. We've talked about that.
I think that one there on IP, that's quite important because people keep asking us.
Yeah, well, so we'll just hang off. Jared's got a question there, and we'll come back to that in a second. So, do you want to talk about IP or
no, you do,
me? So, we do get a lot of questions about IP strategy and what we've done and what we've done to protect the bikes being copying. So the first thing, a couple of things I'd say is we've worked with a company called Ray's Attorneys in Perth. They're Australia-wide, but obviously we're in Perth, from the beginning. And the way they approach things, which we really liked, is let's get a strategy out. Let's think about the problems we could come across. Let's protect what we need to protect. Let's not overprotect. Some people will overprotect, spend lots and lots of money on things that they could never defend because they would never have enough money or whatever to actually defend them. So the approach we've taken is the key thing on our product is the shape and style of the bike and obviously the name of the company. So we're protecting the look of the bike, which is called a design registration. It's not actually a patent. And we've protected in our key markets. So we're going to start here in Australia, and within the first 18 months to 2 years, we'll be looking at expanding to Europe. So we've protected in the key markets in Europe and Australia that shape of the design and the name Tiller of the business. So really people can't copy that. And then the way it's sort of spoken about in the IP is that if you couldn't defend it, if you could patent something and then defend it, and you could afford to do that. But really you only have to do minor changes to things and really the patent's not worth anything. So there's no point spending a lot of time, energy, resources and money on patenting things that someone else could make a slight modification to and do it slightly differently. The way we look at it as a business is we have a strong innovation culture, I guess. We're very good at innovating on the things we do. We have even other features that will come out over the next few years that will keep us ahead of the game, even in the way our software will update over time with the bikes that are out on the street. And that keeps you ahead of the game, and that's the thing that will keep your brand as the one that people want to have, not the copies. So that's kind of the 2 things, is protect certain things that stop the copying. They couldn't make a bike that looks like ours or is named like ours. And then Protect. So we for the first 3 years, no one saw our bike without either signing an agreement of some sort. There was no photos or anything online or anywhere people could see it. And that was all part of the strategy that we set up with Ray's support. So that basically and I'm not talking Ray, as WRAYS, and that's what we did. And so the bike only got shown publicly at the start of this year. So we've had 3.5 years basically of keeping it a secret.
And I'd like to add to this, just in terms of choosing how you manufacture the bike, is in practice, how you protect yourself from people trying to copy it. So what we've done is we could talk about this later, but we're so happy with the quality of manufacturer we've got,
yes,
organised in China, a reputable, honourable company as well. But, we're building parts of the bike with one group, another parts of the bike with another group, so that protects it in the first place. But also, we've chosen people who also have a track record for not behaving in that way.
Yeah.
And so you could go and find the easiest, cheapest group to do something for you, and that wouldn't be a good choice. So we've been careful about that. Yeah. And so I think that's an important practical part of protection.
And they're not in the bike industry, so that's
true.
Yeah. There's no way they're going to build another bike for someone else with our innovations in it. So we see them as part of the team and a partner, not just the manufacturer. So
I also like their enthusiasm is great.
Yeah. Well, they can't wait to get started.
Exactly.
So as soon as this money is in the bank, we're off and running. So in fact, Rob, our colleague who's head of production on the team, he's heading off there. You probably don't know this, but Saturday night he'll be over in China again, meeting them for the next week to do the next step of conversations. But there's only so much we can do without the investment, but we're still getting moving on what we can do before the money's in the bank. So that'll be starting this week. Emily's got down here, we're talking a bit about how we make money. So I'll talk about a bit of it, then you can see. So we are aiming to be, and we are an vertically integrated business to some degree. It's not fully vertically integrated, but all the design, engineering, ownership of the intellectual property, all that sort of stuff happens in our design office, which is currently in Fremantle in Perth. Very creative. We like Fremantle as a place to be because it attracts the right type of people, innovative, creative type people, and that's where we plan to keep that side of the business. And the manufacturing obviously is done offshore, and then again back here we do the retail and the sales and the servicing side of the business. So we own or we're involved in and managing the entire. That's what the vertically integrated bit is, and that allows us to, I guess, not only create great products, but also provide a great customer experience for people right through the process. It also can be quite cost effective, so there's other reasons for it. But the initial reasons were we want to make a great bike, but we also want the customer experience and how people buy, own and service them to be amazing as well. So that's part of the business in terms of talking about how we actually make money. Then you can talk about the gross margin, Ray.
Yeah, look, we as you say, we've got a manufacturing partner, and we're not going to go into the detail of this, but manufacturing partner have signed up to producing, once these bikes go to scale, to producing them at a level, a cost that's going to make us very profitable and give us a good gross margin. I think we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But obviously that's really critical, and part of choosing our manufacturing partner was about people who want to work with us to drive that price down, maintain quality. So I think that's locked away really. So I'm personally really happy about that side of it. And I think, I suppose, like we see ourselves as an online business involving enthusiasts out there on the ground who love the product. And I think that is actually a way of generating margin as well. Mm-hmm. So we don't envisage having middle people. Yeah. We don't see ourselves as being in bike shops unless the market tells us otherwise. Yeah. And therefore we just want to link between producing the bikes, getting them delivered to people, and having a group of enthusiasts on the ground who love it, who want to on-sell it, and partially want to repair it as well. So we don't see that we should have middlemen. and it's not even that's point is partly about cost, but it's actually more about philosophy, really.
Yeah.
Is that we see ourselves as a movement, and the more people you get involved in things, the more likely you are to make a difference, which is where we started with the business.
And it's really what's got us this far. I mean, think about it. Like, as you'd see from the crowdfunding video, and I was just talking to someone last night, you know, when you see that video, I don't know how many people turned up on that day, 50 or 60 people, but that's probably a quarter or a third or whatever it is of the people that have been involved in some way, directly, not just, we think this is a good idea, they've done something, they've machined a part, or they've taken some photos for us, or whatever it is. So the whole business has really grown as a result of participation. So that's the thing we want to do going forward. Some people ask about like accessories and spare parts. A lot of spare parts that you'll need replaceable, they'll be available online. You know, in fact, interestingly with Tiller, we don't go to any shops anymore. Everything we buy, pretty much for our prototypes that we've built, has come in online. It makes it a lot easier, a lot more research. You can get the cost you want. So we're going to go online with all the spare parts and accessories as well. Then over time, we're looking at partnerships with people like the RAC in WA, where we could start offering insurance, roadside assist, those kind of products as value adds if people want them. You don't have to have them, but that's something that, and even over here in Victoria, there's RACV, so there's companies around the country, and we imagine similarly in Europe, that have services that people would want to take advantage of. So the goal is obviously to create an amazing bike that doesn't need a lot of roadside assist, but it might be something people would like to have as well as peace of mind.
So when do I get to talk about why I love equity crowdfunding?
You can do that right now, Ray.
Yeah, okay. So I guess if you're watching this, you may have some idea what it is, but essentially it's relatively new in Australia, and it allows you to pull together a lot of different investors, really at different levels of investment, from relatively quite small to very large, into one crowd. And without boring people with the detail, it means that we these days don't have to change our company structure to do that. Yep. So we can stay the same as we are. But we really like the fact that people can become part of the movement with this and own a slice of it. And, you know, like we have raised more than $1 million already in a conventional way. So it's not that we can't get serious, sophisticated investors to want to invest. And in fact, we've been meeting with quite a few in the last couple of days, even in Melbourne. So that's not the issue. But the issue is, as we've traveled around on the journey of this business, we've met a lot of people who say, oh, I love this, I'd like to be a part of it, but they're not wealthy, don't have a lot of spare cash. They just like to help and be in it. And so, you know, like I just love this methodology of bringing together the crowd with all the sophisticated people. And it's just been going really well so far. And it sort of validates the fact that people want to do this. And then it's just part of it, like I keep talking about, we want to build a movement here. It's just not just a business. So this is a wonderful way of getting people to become part of it. And I think it's really nice. I think we know in our own lives that, you know, where we have a little bit of skin in the game or a little bit of stake in it, you know, like we're really passionate about it and keep following it. And I think the more people that follow it, the more good input we're going to get from people about why don't we do this, and have you thought about that? And that has always been our method, hasn't it?
Exactly.
Listen to advice and try and...
Which gets back to the large board. As well.
Yeah, listen to as many people as possible. So I really like that, and I think it's a great method.
Yeah, and the people last night at our investor meeting, you know, like they sort of have this caution about telling us what they really think or asking us questions. And basically at the end of the conversation, a couple of them said, you know, it's really nice to hear you guys. You're actually really open to hearing what our questions are, and what, you know, you're an open book. And I guess that's part of our philosophy. We've always been an open book so that we can learn whether this is actually the right direction or what we're doing. Otherwise, we'll change it. And I think, but, you know, last night, I think it really confirmed that we are in the right direction, because the questions we answered really well, and a lot of people love what we were saying. And Birchall even said, you know, they hung around a long time. So the event ended quite late because there was a lot of, you know, I guess they liked being part of what we were doing and asking lots of good questions. So yeah, it was a good event. Let me just check questions. There might be a couple here. So Jared's asked a question. Have you had interest from Brisbane region? We would love to physically look and feel at your product. The answer is yes. So for those that don't know, we've actually got a page on our website where you can register your interest for test riding the bike. We have, I don't know the exact numbers because I haven't looked lately, but there's probably over 20 to 30 in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne. We did consider running test rides while we were down here in Melbourne, but we've so overwhelmed with meetings with investors that I haven't been able to run them. But the plan is, in these eastern states, is to run those test rides maybe within the next 6 months. So I'm not going to commit to that at this point, but our plan is to come to the East Coast as quickly as possible. And depending on how much we raise in the investment, for those that have been listening to us in the past, our goal is to kind of get somewhere between 1 and 1.5 million as our lower end of our raise and 3 million as the upper end. At the 3 million end, that's when we start expanding to the eastern states much quicker. So in a way, if you're in Brisbane, Sydney or Melbourne, you want us to come here quicker, get your friends on board, get on board, and we'll be getting over here much quicker. So
I do recall, though, about Brisbane, that quite surprised me was then when we were doing early exploration of the eastern states, like where's the interest?
Yes.
Like we had imagined that, Melbourne and Sydney, and we'll see what happens in Brisbane. But Brisbane, we came out quite strong and early, didn't it? I remember a board meeting where that was reported, and I thought, wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, so. It was. I mean, maybe I think Jared assumed he is from Brisbane, but we didn't know much. I mean, I've been to Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, but we didn't know if there was as much cycling around Brisbane as Sydney and Melbourne. But it seems there is, and I think it's punching above its weight in that regard. And we hear a lot about also the share scooters that have been introduced in downtown Brisbane. Yeah. So, I mean, a big part of this is how much does your local council actually invest in cycling infrastructure? There's more infrastructure here than in Perth. There's more infrastructure here in Melbourne than in Sydney. And I'd love to hear a bit more about how that's going up in Brisbane, because that makes a big difference in terms of people wanting to ride. So you can have a great bike, but if you don't feel safe on the road, then it doesn't really matter. So that's good. Thank you for that question. We'll probably get a few more over the next couple of weeks, so we'll answer those online.
Yeah, how do people invest? That'd be the thing to tell them, wouldn't it, now?
It would be.
Okay. So, again, I've spoken about my enthusiasm for equity crowdfunding. So our platform that we're using is Virtual.
Yep.
And virtual.com, if I'm not mistaken.
That's it.
And if you go to that website, you'll see our Tellurides section prominently there. And at the moment, we're still in the expression of interest phase. So what you can do is go on there if you're so inclined, and you can say, I wouldn't mind investing at this particular level. And what that does is it gives you, in essence, a pre-sales advantage. So, when the offer, just before the offer opens to the general public, you get a chance to take up a section. You'll get an offer document at that stage. So you'll be able to see, like if you're used to looking at IMs, it's pretty much exactly the same, pretty close to that. So there's lots of information you can test out, and you should test out our bona fides and what we've been talking about to you today. And you can take up that investment before the big crowd.
Yep.
And as we're obviously going to be oversubscribed,
well, there's some big people asking some questions about how much they want to put in. So, and as I said at the start of this, the tally of expressions of interest is very strong, and the number is, in terms of expression of interest, it's over the 350 range, and the range of, if everyone invested at their upper end now, we'd be at 1.7 million, somewhere around then. So the response has been amazing. Are we surprised? We're a little bit surprised because we've never done this before, but we're not surprised to a large degree because the business is, 3.5 years down the track, lots of, planning and hitting milestones to the point where we're really one step away from production and putting bikes on the road. And that's, once you start generating revenue, that's a whole slightly different game.
Yeah. I'm encouraged, but not surprised.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you again for those people watching that have expressed an interest. It is also important now to convert those expressions of interest through to an actual investment, and that's what we'll be talking about over the next couple of weeks. So we should open the round next week. There's a lot of I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed, but that's a bit of what we're doing. We're meeting investors and spending a bit of time getting that sorted out with Birchal here. So look like we're open mid next week at this point.
Yeah.
So
thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.
Contact us because we're interested in your comments.
Yep.
And your feedback and questions.
Yep.
And your investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye.
From Melbourne.
From Melbourne.